In this video, we're going to cover a number of topics regarding electronic catalog within Translate POS. As you'll see here, we're going to go through the basic design of the electronic catalog, how to add items from the electronic catalog or where it's used in adding items to inventory, retail price management, various aspects of that, special order management, because that comes around to when orders are created, we're aware of special orders and also purchase orders, and also this ties into multiple vendors. That's where we'll talk about primary and secondary vendors. The core reorder process itself, and how does that work? What does it mean? What is the comping of a purchase order? It's dividing up a PO between a couple vendors based on the electronic catalog available information that you have. And then finally around to managing retail prices, that being that of the primary vendor, the targeted vendor, whichever you want to look at it, and also a desired GP percentage effect that you can override that catalog information. So that's what we're going to talk about, so let's move on. So the background of electronic catalog is this, is that into a central database, this electronic catalog symbol here, is imported, whether it's a communication to a vendor and automatic comes down, or it's imported through spreadsheet utilities or CSV file utilities. But the core of all that information is certainly the vendor part number, description, suggested retail, current cost, as in the replacement cost today, the class/department, and the UPC are typically the minimum units of information that are brought in. The communicating vendors are certainly much broader than that, but that's the core of what these spreadsheet and CSV type imports are based on. Other communicating vendors are listed here, some yet to be added or in process, but this is what builds this information. Once that information is presented into the catalog, and simple selection of an add button when you locate that item in the catalog will add it to inventory. These items are separate from your inventory items. These are only purchase items that you have. Catalog all the other available products from your complete vendor line that you have. So there's the general structure of the electronic catalog. So where is the electronic catalog used? Well, it's primarily up front when starting up bootstrap stores or adding a new vendor, is adding inventory from the electronic catalog. There are 4 distinct areas that can happen. As we saw earlier, is that the selection of that item within the catalog and simply hitting the add item, and it adds it to the inventory. It will prompt with questions along the way, but it gets auto added. The auto add at the point of sale, if I scan a product and it's not found in inventory, then it'll utilize that UPC to go locate that item in the catalog. If found, then it will add it to the inventory automatically and then present that product to be sold at the point of sale based on that primary vendor's retail price that was established. The next area is under purchase orders. If you create a PO for that selected vendor that has a catalog, you enter in the item IDs, etc. It will automatically add items from the electronic catalog if that item is not already in the inventory. This will also allow you to do it through UPC. That if the UPC is scanned in and it doesn't find it, it will add it from the primary vendor and add also the information into the system. 4th area is in the wireless application, a number of different spots there. If you're doing a simple cycle count, it'll do an auto add if required. If you're doing just an item lookup and you have if you have the options configured, it will do an auto add at that point also, just by looking up items if it does not locate that item in inventory. So 4 distinct areas. Let's drop back to purchase orders for a moment. You can import into a purchase order a 2-column file through an import of a CSV or XLS file or XLSX. first column being the item number of that vendor, and then the second column being the quantity of desired amount. So you can auto add items to your inventory through an imported file into a purchase order. Give it a try. Next, we have the other options that are available with electronic catalog, is that being the source of pricing. As you add that item to inventory, it establishes the suggested retail price from the vendor and also brings along that current cost for that item. That allows then the system to utilize that information in determining retail price discounts, cost plus assignments through the price matrix. So there's a variety of pricing mechanisms that can occur within the system. There are about 14 to 15 different ways of doing pricing, anything from a group pricing all the way up to a matrix pricing, quantity breaks, etc. So that's not the intent of this video, but just trying to get everybody oriented to what the catalog is doing and assisting us. Next is the mention that the system will manage special order items. The reason this is brought up at this point is that at point of sale or on sales orders or any number of those areas, you can indicate that this needs to be a special order item. For instance, at point of sale, the prompt can be turned on that if an item is brought in from the catalog, it can be prompted to automatically say yes or no to make this a special order item. They would simply default that to probably yes, that every new item that was added on the fly at point of sale is set up as a special order item. So that is using that as a source, that being the catalog as a source of where are these items coming from. The second part of that is if it's a special order, the system can automatically create a purchase order to support that special ordered item by that customer. It will cover, the system will cover the special order side and the related deposit, but also the PO relationship, that it will have indeed a supporting PO for that specially ordered item. Upon receipt of that special ordered item, the system can tell the receiver that, oh, that item goes to that particular person because we have record of it in the special order or the sales order that's supporting it. So there's the sales order access to the electronic catalog to create these special orders. That's why that's in this conversation. Not all systems desire to have that immediate creation of a PO within the system, and they want to allow the reorder process to build that PO independently of the sales order or special order status. So you can run it a couple of different ways, and the system will allow you to configure it. So on to the topic of the electronic catalog and its relationship to multiple vendors. So as we've been adding items to the system in our conversation just a moment ago, is there may be the instance that we have multiple vendors. If that's true, then as we see here, for this particular product, it's available from 2 vendors based on that common UPC. There are 2 different retails, 2 different costs based on that vendor relationship. So the system can house this information. Now, this relationship, the electronic catalog, is found within this lookup by screen here, this tab in the center, which is represented here. So there is the one vendor, the primary vendor, and the other vendor and their relationship. This can house multiple vendors in its basis. Now, one of these vendors has been marked as primary in their vendor setup, and that's what we've done here. So when this SKU was added, it may have been added by scanning or importing it through a Oracle PO, but it establishes it as a primary vendor's mean true value in this case. There are utilities that allow you to shift in mass the primary and secondary relationships based on needs. That's again for another topic. The reorder process, again, around this topic of electronic catalogs. So let's start a reorder process. We are going through a class A for that primary vendor for sellable items only. And I think actually as I ran this later on, I ran this as dynamic ordering, which is sort of the de facto standard today, which will look at minimums and maximums of order quantities and get that math correct for maximum allowances where needed. And that's what that dynamic is. It's a culmination of all these processes into a single one assessed by item. So the point here is we have a reorder. That particular reorder, and I'm going to cite back to that product that we looked at earlier, that in this reorder, we have one on hand, a minimum of 2. We have no outstanding POs for this particular product, so that's why there's a recommendation of 1 to come back up to the minimum of 2. If there were POs and supporting sales orders, it would probably still be a quantity of 1 because these would account for each other. This screen is typically I do not stop at, but it's a good point to come to review the reorder process. I normally go straight to the export to the IOR export screen. Some will go straight on to the PO. Much the same data in both screens, but I will use the next screen here will be the IOR screen. The reorder and inquiry and edit form is what we are looking at here. This is the SKU we just saw. Recommendation was 1. We're going to leave this quantity at 1, and that's the quantity that appears right here, the 1. So this will be 1 unit of that adapter being ordered on this purchase order. Now, there is a color coding you will see that as you move on through, the color here is an unedited value. If you do edit, you will get a different color combination going on as you create this order. When you close this, whether you're using the IOR screen or the PO screen, ultimately you end up with a purchase order. So let's move on to the next screen about managing POs between vendors. In the previous example, we created a PO. We've opened up that purchase order because it was built under that primary vendor. Then we chose the comp button on the main screen. And then that's what the system is doing. It is comparing to the indicated comparison vendor the cost basis, and in fact landed cost basis, between the 2 vendors. The first portion of this screen is comparing the cost. Here's the unit cost. Then this next column is the landed cost, which can include a percentage for the item, a base cost for the delivery service, or a variety of different topics. That information is set up on the vendor screen, second tab, and it has about the percentage or fixed fees for that comparison. In this particular case, there is not a landed costing compared, just to leave things simple. The system will first establish and only establishes where that item will be coming from based on the cost of the item. If the other vendor has a lower cost, then it automatically selects the compare for that other vendor. The far right compares the availability of product in each vendor. So first column is the current column, in this case, the TVC, and their current quantities. These quantities are almost a virtual on-time current on hand. I would say these are probably within the hour as far as the current on hands for each location. These that are in green indicate that there is inventory available at those locations, current and comp, for the selected items. Now, this particular item does not have a quantity, as in absent from that product, or is it a zero? Either case, these would be indicating that there's no available information about that quantity. So you would make a decision whether to get it from the other vendor or not. This checkbox is chosen because, again, of the cost difference, not the availability. It is up to the user to choose which side they want to get that based on availability. Once that is completed, choosing the Accept button in the bottom left will then create a compare purchase order for that vendor using their part numbers. And then we'll retire that item from the original or current vendor. So it'll split the order for you and create a supporting PO. Next, along with the idea of electronic catalog, is the discussion about replacement costs and gross profitability and retail prices. In this example, there is a item, which is the one we saw earlier with the $31.99, has a current replacement retail GP percentage of 45.20, which is based upon the average cost. The replacement, which is this value, aka catalog cost, that replacement GP percentage is 47.05. Now, if we run this through the electronic catalog, through the eCatalog price control, the price will typically get derived from the electronic catalog as a suggested price from that vendor. What you can do is have a desired GP percentage that allows you to control that and override that of the electronic catalog. So let's, in the next couple screens, let's go look at this. So to the left, we've chosen a GP percentage of 50%. As I enter in, I've gone to select edit, and then I've entered in a GP percentage of 50. The system will automatically generate a $33.88 price for that product. Now I turned off or left off any rounding, so it's very straightforward that how did we come to $33.88? Because of the GP percentage of 50. Yep, that's $16.94. Yeah, that's the price. Now you can override that $33.88 as we did here. Again, this is the same screen, it's just a later edit. I selected edit and I changed it to $32.50. That in turn maintained that 50% stayed because that's the desired GP percentage, but it calculated that based on this $32.50 that the gross profits GP percentage, the replacement GP percentage with $32.50 is 47.88. That's what it represented. And that would be the label that you would then print. If you selected print label, you get a $32 label. Now, can we automate this process? You may go in and change this price to $32.50 for the moment, but in the future you want to maintain that 50%. How do you manage this? eCatalog price control is a utility that will go and create specific lists of items for review of their retail prices from selected vendors. In this case, Class A products were chosen for true value, and the system generated a list of 1,167 items that had a possible price change to be made. Now you can do some filtering here to have increase or decreasing prices, and that can be talked about later. But in this particular case, the price of $31.99 came directly from the primary vendor's catalog. And that's why we see that being presented here in red. The current price is $32.50. If I choose the copy button here or the copy all, the system will then copy that price, as we see here, into the new MSRP and new retail price. Ultimately, this list of new MSRP prices, new retails, and the number of labels desired will be filled in here. Selecting print labels will then print those labels. Now, the big thing is that folks will look at this and say, I don't want to print 1,100 prices, nor do I want to update 1,100 prices. Our suggestion is to go ahead and update all 1,100 prices so that if someone inquires about this product that has been on the shelf and not been stocked for a while, but now what is the current price on that, you would have a current price for that product. Because when you go select print labels, at that moment, when you're printing the label by order of location, which is our suggestion to make you more efficient, you can limit those labels to be printed to those that are on hand and or on order. So you get, say, those 200 items that are in stock, get a new price on those, and also update the prices of those items that are currently not stocked, but you want to make sure you had a current price in the system so that you don't make the mistake of quickly looking at an item that has not been stocked for a while and not been maintained to give them an errant price. So that's why we say to go ahead and include all these versus filtering at this point and then printing labels. We suggest go ahead and select them all, update them all, print the labels, but when you come to the printing, you can limit what labels are printed, but all prices are updated. So just a quick review. We went over the electronic catalog, the overall design, the use of the catalog to add items to the inventory, retail management of prices, a couple of methods to do that. Predominantly this last section around the eCatalog price control. The use of special order management and how to do sales orders and or POs. Primary and secondary vendors, how does that play into the system? The reorder process, comparing POs between vendors and saving costs. And then electronic catalog, eCatalog price control, and then the effect of desired GP percentage. So hopefully that gives you a fairly comprehensive review of the electronic catalog and its many uses within the system. Thank you.